Welcome, Jess, to my podcast, One for the Road. It's so lovely to have you on my show today. I think we've been trying to fix this up for a long time. We recorded a podcast, Sober Motivation, didn't we? There was four of us on the panel, and we got chatting after that, and I thought you'd make a brilliant guest on my show. So thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored.
Oh, bless you. And we both are coaches on the Sober Buddy app as well. So we've got a lot in common there, but we can talk about that later. But as most of my listeners know, we love a life story, and you have a fascinating one. And we always start at the beginning. So if you don't mind, if you could tell us how it was for you growing up.
So for me growing up, I would say on the outside, from the outside, it was very different than what was going on the inside. So from the outside, it was like this Norman Rockwell painting, perfect family, mom and dad, high school sweethearts, married. I have a brother who's about 5.5 years older than me, the cat, the dog, middle class family, nice neighborhood. The inside was a little bit different. Both of my parents grew up on the East Coast, and I grew up in Beaverton, Oregon, which is a little suburb outside of Portland, Oregon. And it was kind of a ritual for them to have their drinks every night when my dad came home from work. And but not to excessiveness. I mean, they would have, my mom would have a glass or two of wine, and my dad would have a glass or two. He liked his gin. Um, but for all intents and purposes on the outside, and for the most part, everything was pretty normal, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? He liked a gin, you know.
Yes.
And it's funny how we see it as kids, because when I was growing up and I think about my parents drinking, it appeared that they didn't drink. But I think sometimes we equate it to our drinking, don't we? What is normal these days? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so how old was you then?
I remember honestly growing up that was always just what they did
Yeah,
every. So I don't have like a specific time of remembering, when they started. They always did that.
yeah,
But mind you, a glass or two of gin for my dad was, looking back, probably 3 shots in each glass, right? Because
yeah,
it was just on ice, and he'd fill it to the top and drink it. And my mom, her 2 to 3 glasses of wine. So for me, that was just the norm,
mm,
and at least within my household. And so I guess I didn't really think anything of it at the time when I was, in grade school,
yeah.
middle school, didn't think about it.
The old home pouring. So, do you think it had an influence on you as being like the acceptable thing? If it was every single night.
Yeah, I think for me as a child looking in on it, that's just what you did as an adult. That,
Mm,
that was part of your daily routine, right? That was just
mm,
something that you did. And when we would get together with family, same thing, grandma had her favorite drink, and grandpa would get his favorite drink, and make sure everybody has their favorite drink, because that makes you a good host when people come over for the holidays.
yeah,
And so it was definitely very much a part of the holidays as well, and celebrating and making sure that it was a way, in a weird way, I think it was a way of like being a good host. At least to my parents, that was part of being a good host, is making sure you had everybody's favorite alcoholic beverage on hand.
yeah. The thing we do, right, to celebrate, commiserate everything, innit? How old
Yeah.
were you then when you had your first dabble at alcohol then?
I think I was in about sixth grade, so probably 12.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was quite young. I was curious. And I was always that kid who wanted to kind of push the boundaries, just, see what life is like. What is this stuff about? And I remember that we were at my house where, I mean, the liquor was up like on the top shelf of the pantry, but it wasn't hidden. It was nowhere that we couldn't get it. And there was like two or three of my girlfriends over. I think my parents maybe were gone for a little bit. We were old enough to stay by ourselves for a little while, and we just kind of started taking swigs out of the vodka bottle. And came up with this grand idea that if we, however much we took, it was like a big bottle. So you can imagine, like, if you take a little bit of a swig, it doesn't really show
Yeah.
that much has gone down. But we came up with this grand idea. Well, if it does, we'll just put water in it. And they won't know. That was our thought at the time. And so I was I would think I was 12 when I first tried.
God. And how did you, do you remember how you felt? Like,
I remember eerily noticing that all my other friends were like gagging, right? Like, this is the most disgusting, horrible stuff. Like, not, probably what I would consider a normal reaction. And for me, I was like, oh, I kind of
mm,
like the warm feeling in my belly and the tingling feeling. And like, I had a very, I guess, different reaction, I think almost instantaneously to it. It was just like,
you took
okay,
to it straight away.
yeah,
God, that's exactly how I was. Like, I
yeah.
will say though, it was disgusting, but it was like when I first had my first cigarette, it was like, oh my God, this is vile. But you push through, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely disgusting, but I think the feeling that I was getting overrode the disgustingness. Like, I was willing to deal with that, for I liked the way it was making me feel.
Yeah, that was it, wasn't it? It's not so much about the taste, it's the effect, isn't it?
Yes, for
And
sure.
what do you remember what it kind of gave you? Did it give you, you say about that warm fuzzy feeling? Because I remember for me, I mean, I was 14 and it
Yeah.
gave me that real sort of sense of confidence and fitting in and being part of something. Do you know what I mean? Because growing up, I felt quite isolated.
Hmm. I always felt growing up that I was different, and not in the way that, like, I had good friends and I had community and I was involved in dance and sports and all these kind of what they would say, the checking the boxes of a normal childhood. But I was told often, like, especially by my father, that I was too sensitive, that I was, basically I kind of got in his way. I pushed the boundaries. I was that kid that liked to push the boundaries, but I was also very sensitive, and he didn't know how to deal with that. And so I think for me, it's like it dulled that sensitivity to things. And so therefore I, was more outgoing, or, more of what I thought I should be, and more of an extrovert when really I'm quite an introvert.
Yeah.
And I think it also quieted my mind because I was an anxious child. And it definitely kind of slowed everything down, so my brain would just stop for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been sensitive and that, and an overthinker. And the more people I talk to, like there's a little rhyme in it. Yeah, if you're a drinker, you're an overthinker. You know.
It's true.
Yeah, and calming the mind down. But it's interesting what you say about your dad as well. Being labelled as too sensitive, that can be quite hurtful, can't it? And it can make you wonder who you are as well as a child growing up.
Yeah, I think I felt like there was something wrong with
Hmm.
me.
Yeah.
Um, and many times, he would compare me to his sister, my aunt, who was an alcoholic. And I'm very sensitive. I'm too sensitive. I'm too dramatic. All of these too much.
Mm.
And um, and so yeah, that definitely played a pivotal role in my life of feeling like there's something wrong with me.
And when you say you was someone who always pushed the boundaries, I suppose that meant as well reaching out for that top shelf vodka bottle, wasn't it? It's like the little rebel in you of like, I'll show you who I really am. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, and I think looking back as an adult, I think I was angry. There was a lot of
yeah,
anger that I had going on. Um, and also I remember always wanting to be an adult. Like, I just want to be an adult. And that was part of being an adult. in
Yeah,
my
growing
world.
up quick, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
I'm like a grown up, and it's interesting what you said about, you know, growing up as a kid, watching your dad come in from work, and the first thing is a drink. As soon as you come in, that whole performance, almost like the ritual of drinking every night, and that's your role models in front of you, showing you what being an adult looks like, isn't it? Go to work and then drinking as soon as you get in.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what you do.
yeah. And so at 12 that happened, like where did it manifest from there? Like from 12 years old?
So I would say I kind of just dabbled, here and there. I mean, when the opportunity arose and we kind of felt like it, we meaning me and a couple of girlfriends or whatever, I didn't drink alone. So it was usually with friends, almost always. And it just kind of dabbled here and there. It wasn't, a big deal at the time. And I would say going into middle school, most people hated middle school. I actually loved it, which was ironic. But that's where people were starting to smoke marijuana. There was more drinking. And I would say it was more of like around quote unquote having fun. So it wasn't, serious, I guess, at that point. It was like, oh, we're going to go bowling at the bowling alley. Somebody bring some, liquor or beer or
Yeah.
something. And
Yeah.
it seemed to be that we had like really easy access. That was the other thing. Like the ability to get it whenever we wanted it was super easy.
Yeah. Is that age, in it? Like how old? So sorry about middle school age. How old was that then?
I would say like 12 to 14.
Oh, really? We got a completely different school system over here. We
That's
go
right.
to secondary school at 11 and leave at 16. Well,
Ah,
I left at 15, but I just sacked it all off and left. But yeah, so 12 to 14. So you were smoking marijuana at that age and drinking and
I don't remember. I think I might have tried it once, but I wasn't too, for whatever reason, the marijuana at that time was like, and I tried cigarettes, I think when I was like in sixth grade, because we had happened to find somebody left a pack actually in the back of the elementary school where we went. And I thought that was disgusting. So it was really funny. And I think I tried marijuana once. The interesting thing is I didn't want any mind altering drugs, is what didn't want supposedly, but alcohol is a mind
it
altering drug.
really is, isn't it?
But, in my house, it wasn't considered that, right? So somehow I made this distinction in my mind, this false distinction that, like, well, alcohol isn't illegal. It isn't bad for you. It's part of being an adult. Whereas, like, the marijuana, I mean, I think I tried it, coughed my lungs up practically, and was like,
Yeah,
at
yeah.
that time, had left it alone pretty much.
I was the same. Like booze was my choice of drug all day long. Like I tried different bits and pieces and that, and I just didn't feel like it worked for me. But with booze, it was always reliable. In the beginning when I was young, I might have too much in the ceiling to spin round and I'd throw up or something. But again, I just pushed through that. It was part of the evening, oh God, I'm going to be ill tonight. But did you notice then at that age that you were slightly different from everyone else? Or was it just seemed like you was all the same and all doing the same thing?
I think at that point, it felt like it was just the same.
Yeah.
It was just like I said, it wasn't getting in the way. It wasn't extreme at that time. And I think it was just like almost felt like a rite of passage. Like it's
Mm,
just what you were doing.
mm,
And I did like the feeling of like, um, I don't know. I'm not an adrenaline junkie by any means, but I think at the time I kind of liked the high that it gave me, just like knowing that we were like kind of sneaking around
yeah.
about it.
The
Um,
rebel again in you. You
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that just was like, yeah. And I think that I was pretty good at like playing it safe. Like I didn't drink like to the point where I was slosh drunk or anything like that. It was more of just like take a little bit here and there. That was pretty much middle school.
Yeah. So what point then, what age were you where it started to get more? For me, it was when I think I got a job, and in the UK, you didn't need ID to go into a pub. So when you say about feeling like an adult or fitting in with the adult. I used to go in this pub in a place called Hatbridge, Skinner's Arms, and it was a real male testosterone place of pool and darts and big muscle blokes at the bar and whatever. And I would go in there like a little pink faced kid of 16 and accepted straight away. And I felt like a man, you know, coming in from a job, my first job. Um, and you know, that made me feel like drinking more. I was like wanted to stay the session in the pub and that. What age were you where you sort of remember things changing with your drinking?
So I would say probably my sophomore year of high school. So that's 10th grade for us here in the US. So probably 16, 17. Um, people were starting to have parties, like house parties and things like that. I still don't feel like it was really, really like getting in the way of things. And honestly, that probably wasn't until I would say about 18 to 20 is
Right.
when it really started ramping up. And at the time, I was in an abusive relationship with my high school sweetheart. So that kind of perpetuated, I think, the increase as well, for sure, in drinking.
Yeah, that often is the case, isn't it? So
Yeah.
how bad did it get, Jess? Like, did you end the relationship or?
I was with him for about 5 years, so a long time. And it was during those kind of pivotal years of like 15 to 20. Um, and I eventually did, but I actually didn't quit drinking till after I had left that relationship. And I knew though, it had gotten out of hand. I think the thing that looking back that was scary, that was telltale signs that I had a problem that at the time I was actually applauded for, is that I could outdrink any of the guys any
Right.
day. I mean, the amount of alcohol that I could consume and still be standing up and people not, I'm not even slurring my words. People not even knowing that how much I had had. Never getting sick. I think I threw up one time from drinking, would rarely ever get the spins. I mean, looking back, it was like, it was crazy to me. I remember being at a party that was like, I don't even know, we would rent, these apartments would let you rent an apartment, which looking back is so crazy, for a night or two. And so we'd rent an apartment and throw these huge, parties. And I remember one time having like, I loved rum was my thing. So I'd had like half a fifth of the rum and then I'd had like 6 beers and a half a bottle of wine and I'm still standing and I still remember everything. And looking back, it's like, that is not something to be proud of. And that is really dangerous, right? But I was applauded for that. It was like, look at her go. Like, she's crazy. She can drink, so much and outdrink all of us guys, these big burly guys or whatever. Um, that was probably looking back, one of the first things I should have took heed to, I believe.
Well, you must have built up an incredible resilience then to be able to do that. Is that just years of drinking then?
I don't know. I mean, I did slowly, looking back, it definitely slowly increased over time, the amount that it would need that I would, I was always pushing the limit, right? See how much. And, after a while, it would just go, it tasted like water. It went down way too easy for me. That was the other thing. I'd look around and everybody's still, halfway left with their drink and I'm on my second one.
Yeah.
And, um, I don't know. Like looking back, I think did the tolerance it's just odd to me. I don't know is my answer because I feel like I just always drink a lot. Just always, I mean, I didn't drink because I enjoyed the taste. I didn't drink because I wanted to just have, a drink on the patio with friends. Like I
Yeah.
drank to get intoxicated. That was the point.
And the thing is you sound like a similar drinker to me, is that it was harder and harder to get drunk because of our tolerance to it and how much we can drink. I mean, you know, for me, I could drink a litre of vodka in one night and I'd just get up and go to work the next day. And I'm not saying that I was right as rain. I was probably hanging, but I still did it where a lot of people would be in bed for a week. And
Yeah, yeah. I held down this whole time. I held down, I was going to school, I graduated high school. And then once I graduated, I had full-time job before I went off to college. Kind of that was a different story, but I dropped out and then I went to work full time. And I remember being up till 4 a.m. drinking, partying, and I would turn around and at 8 a.m. I'd be at my job. And I felt like crap, kind of, but I could function. And I don't think nobody knew. I held down the job just fine, which
yeah,
blows my mind. I could never, can never do
no,
that
not
now.
now. But
No.
it's amazing as well how we lived like that back then, isn't it? Because I had a similar experience. I had this new contract to these, I had to carpet all these offices, right, on a Saturday morning, meet him at 7 a.m. in the morning, the MD, right? And I said to my mate who was helping me, I said, right, we're not going out tonight because we got that big job tomorrow. And he says, well, we can go and have one, surely. And I said, all right, we'll have a couple. We'll buy each one a drink, right? 4 o'clock in the morning we got in. That's how I rolled with drinking. You know, it's like that one turned into two, one for the road, which is obviously how we got this podcast and that. But I had no willpower about drinking. I always was, I'll worry about it tomorrow, actually. I never ever thought about the consequences of my drinking. Um, and that's why I got myself in such a state because I had no boundaries around it. It was like once I had one drink, that was it. I was like, I always say it's like a greyhound out of a trap. And as soon as the trap comes up, I'm off. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, some people, they'll have two or three drinks and go, do you know what? Got a big day tomorrow. I'm off home again. But not me. I ended up clubbing, kebab down my shirt, you know. So, so around that time, then you say you was in a troubled relationship. Did that ramp your drinking up as well?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I mean, it was like I spent a good probably year or more trying to emotionally detach myself, figuring out a safe way to leave that relationship. And, the drinking was a way of, I think, a child trying to handle and cope with a really serious situation
Yeah,
and not feeling like, once again, anybody understood. My parents grew up very sheltered, and I don't think that they even knew what the heck to do with their daughter at that point. And so I still felt like that outcast. I was causing trouble and problems, and a burden to them. So I felt really alone in all of that. And kind of, I was back in college at the time. So I got myself back into college, but I was trying to figure out, like, how am I going to pivot? How am I going to turn this life around, and all by myself, pretty much.
yeah,
And
yeah,
all of my friends were off into universities. They were doing the university thing. They were in college. They were living their life. They were, and I'm here. I was going to school to a local college, but living at home and trying to figure out by myself, how am I going to make this pivot, knowing that I need to. And I think for me, the one pivotal point that it was so poignant that I remember is, it was a typical, we had this guy, his mom would like basically leave us the house in high school, and then, 16 years old up to 20, whatever, and let us party in the house. So we had a party house. I had older friends, that could get the liquor. It was all there for you, right? And it was a typical, probably Friday or Saturday night, having a party, people over drinking. And that night, I don't know that I drank more than I ever did. I don't remember. But what I do remember is waking up the next morning at the house, which many times, that was not abnormal to stay the night. And I was shaking terribly. And I didn't understand what was going on. And I had one of the guys that was there. He's like, hey, if you drink alcohol, it will go away. You'll feel better. You'll feel so much better. Just have a drink. And I was like, okay. And I did. And the shakes went away and I felt normal. And I don't know, whether it's the universe, higher power, God, whoever, but some, an angel watching over me, something just clicked at that moment. And I thought, oh my God, this can't be good.
Mm.
This just can't be good. And that was like a pivotal moment for me. And I can't even explain it, because I hadn't seen that. I hadn't seen that at my house. My parents didn't drink in the morning. Nobody was like fall over drunk, I didn't learn that from anybody or watch that ever happen. I just knew that this must not be okay.
Well, it wasn't, was it? I mean, you was
No,
massively withdrawing from the alcohol, wasn't you?
yeah.
And your body was saying, "Give it back to me." So what did you do from that moment then?
So I remember I drank and I was like, okay, now I feel normal. And I went
Mm.
home and I don't remember if I went to work that day or not, but I remember thinking like, okay, I felt like I was in between two different worlds, right? Like I had the world of the people that I hung out with, my ex, people that were um, into some heavier things, and then kind of this other, group of friends that were going to college and doing stuff. And I remember talking to some of my friends that were moving forward in their life and saying, I really can't drink anymore. I really can't, because I kind of had two separate people. When I really wanted to get wasted, I knew where to go, right?
Yeah,
Where
yeah,
my other group of friends, they partied too, but they'd have a couple or three or four. It was never like out of control.
yeah.
So I remember going to one of my friends at the time and just saying, hey, telling her, this is what happened. I don't think I can drink anymore. And she's like, okay, that's fine. Just, you can come with me when we go to parties, because that's what everybody was doing at 18, 19, 20. And I'll make sure you don't have a drink. So I'm relying on her. But by the time we would go, I'd say, okay, fine, just two. Just two. I'm doing that bartering with myself, right? Like I can just, if I have somebody help control me, just have one, two, maybe three, I'll be fine. And and bless her heart, she tried. And I did that back and forth for a while, where I was okay, I can go and just have two. And I would sometimes. Sometimes I would. I'd go and I just have two. And I had beers, which is what I hated the most. So I'd make sure I didn't have my favorite drink and have a couple beers, It didn't do anything for me. But I still felt like I was kind of part of the scene, I guess.
Yeah.
And I did that for maybe a year or so. I mean, I really tried to moderate. Um, but as we all know how that goes, that didn't last.
It's a big subject that I talk about a lot. I always say, well, especially in the UK, can you have one drink and then stop and have a cup of tea? You know, and it's impossible, isn't it? I think you cross the line. I mean, some people can do it, but the people that can do it have never had a problem in the first place. You know,
Yes.
so it's amazing as well the language we use with ourselves. Like, oh, I drank the drink I hated the most, but you still drank.
Yep.
Do you know
Because
what I mean?
that was all my way of making it okay,
Yeah,
right? Making it okay
justifying
in
it.
my mind. Justifying it. Yeah, like I have several family members that are alcoholics, or had, alcohol abuse, and oh, I'll drink vodka because it's clean, because it's clear, or
Yeah,
I'll drink beer instead of vodka, or then I'll go to wine, so we all have those justifications. And what was crazy to me looking back is even at
yeah,
that young age, I was not even knowing that that's a common thing, was making those justifications.
yeah. And learning by it as well. So you went a year of dabbling like that. What was the point that you thought, "Do you know what, I need to change this?"
So during that time was when I was kind of emotionally trying to separate from that abusive relationship. I was back in college. And mind you, at that time, um, I, my ex at the time had gotten arrested for things he had done to me, and gotten sent to prison and things of that nature. So, but then he got out, and like a typical abusive relationship, I was back involved. And so I was trying to weave my way out of that. And I think what had happened was I just kept finding myself in more and more serious situations. Like that I'm not proud of. You know, I got pulled over several times when I was drinking and I got let go. Why? I don't know. I shouldn't have. Um, and just doing more and more like of pressing the boundaries and pressing my luck. And I knew it. You know, I was getting pulled over occasionally, you know, not all the time, but occasionally. I shouldn't have been out drinking and driving. It just makes me cringe now. You know, hanging out with people that were doing a lot harder drugs at the time. And like I said, I wasn't even interested. I just wanted the alcohol, but
Mm.
finding myself kind of going down a path of just like things are getting heavier, right? Like there's going to end up being some serious consequences. There already was in my relationship. I was a victim of sexual assault on 3 different occasions. And so I just knew, I think within my heart, that this was leading to some really horrible things and tragic things that were happening. And I, you know, eventually left that relationship safely, thank God, and met my, well, who is now my husband, but at the time met him in college, and that was only like 2 months later after I had left the other relationship. And you know, we talked or whatever, and I thought, oh, I'm finally getting someone who's like educated. Like I thought, you know, like, oh, I'm moving up in the world a little bit, trying to make better choices. Not that that equates a better choice, but thinking in my mind, that young mind, that like at least he's motivated, he's going to school, he's doing something, right? And not in and out of prison.
Yeah.
So I met him, but ironically enough, the first time I actually saw him in person, um, I was out at, I had a friend who was a musical artist. And so he was performing at a bar, but we were allowed to be in there because they made it for underage people. Now, mind you, I was 20. I'm not legal to drink. They're serving me. And I hadn't been drinking a ton at that point. You know, I was trying to moderate and stuff. And that night I drank 5 Long Island iced teas. I don't know if you know what those are, but tons of liquor in them.
Yeah.
And went over to meet my husband at his apartment. And looking back, I'm like, oh, I have a daughter. That makes me shudder. Like you had no idea where you were walking into.
Yeah.
Anyways, long story short, he ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. And just it was like from that point on, I just stopped. I don't know. I remember saying to him that night, even like, I'm really sorry. I have a problem with alcohol. Like, here's this guy who just met me. He's probably thinking, what the heck is this
Yeah.
woman doing on my doorstep, smoking a cigarette? Which, by the way, he was like, hey, just so you know, I don't date people that smoke, and I'm smoking a cigarette and I'm
Yeah. Drunk.
drunk. And I just feel like he was kind of my guardian angel because
Yeah.
he said, I just need to stop drinking. He goes, okay. And he and his friend at the time got all the liquor out of the house. They were 26,
Oh, wow.
and just really supported me. And that was like June when I was 20, and my birthday was in December. And for my 21st birthday, he took me to like a poetry slam thing, didn't drink. And that rest was history
Oh,
with
that's
me.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It's interesting what you said about, if you don't mind me going back to your ex,
Sure.
the abuse you suffered and the chaos in the relationship that I quite often equate to the chaos of our relationship with alcohol. And I think a lot of it, when you said when you come out of prison and you went back to him, it's the familiarity, isn't it? And
Yes.
and when we know it's wrong for us, it's still the familiarity. And this is the same regarding moderation. It's like you seeing how it goes with him. Let's see each other at the weekend and see if we can work it out, kind of thing, is moderation. Um,
Yes.
you
Very
know,
much.
but the familiarity takes us back because it's hard to leave a relationship. You were with him from 15 years old at a tender age, so your growing up period, becoming a woman, and you had a lot of trauma in that relationship as well. And I just, I was thinking there about so many people I speak to where they find it so hard to stop drinking is because the familiarity and, almost like an upheaval in life, isn't it? When you stop, because everything changes, your friendship groups change, and meeting your husband was your guardian angel. It's like the light. And this is where our community comes into it. Your coaching, mine, Sober Buddy, all the other things, AA, and that where people can go to that light and go, do you know what? I want a different way in life now, because you can look back later on and see that was the pivotal moment in my life that changed everything.
Yeah, and I remember telling him, we had an instant connection, and I remember telling him, my life's a mess right now. Like, you do not have to be a part of it, And looking back, I said to him, he was out dating girls and, living his 26-year-old life. And I was like, you didn't have to, you could have easily taken advantage of me. I was in a very bad place at the time. And he goes, no, I just saw something special in you that, that I didn't want to do that to you. And I just, looking back, it just gives me the chills all the time, because I think that could have been, I mean, who knows who I was walking into, right? Like, I don't
Mm.
know this person. And especially as an adult and a mother now, I just look back and think, oh my gosh, and I just, I can't even explain it, but my story with alcohol doesn't end there, but it ends there with me drinking. But then my dad ended up passing away from drinking. Um, and so that was a whole nother situation.
How old was you when that happened then?
I was 27. So, my dad, I always saw him trying to quit drinking, and I couldn't figure it out because I thought it's not really a problem. I don't think, like, looking at it, it was just a ritual thing. But my brother went off to college. I was in seventh grade, and I think that was a hard time for him. And I think he was drinking more than we knew, you know,
Mm.
outside of the house, whatever. I had found like a bottle in the basement, like in his workbench, things like that, where it was like, and he was never like drunk per se. Like, I never saw him, tipsy or even looked like anything like that. But I think he was honestly probably had a high tolerance like I did, and probably consumed a lot more, at least towards the end, than we knew. But a year before he died, he decided to get sober, and he did. And he was the healthiest he'd ever been. He was riding his bike to and from work. He was doing really well. And unfortunately, by that time, he got diagnosed with liver cancer from drinking. He had cirrhosis and liver cancer, stage 4 at that time. That was in February, and he was gone by May.
Oh, that's tough, isn't it? I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
when you when you said growing up though, when you said they appeared to be like the normal drinkers and that, I was thinking, well, you're a child like me when I used to watch my mum and dad drink, and we don't gauge it by anything, do we? There's nothing to gauge it by. Like now, we go, oh well, yeah, they could stop at 2, they could stop at 3, but then we go to bed and we don't know what happens after that, and we don't know about the hidden bottles and stuff like that. It's our assumption, isn't it, that there wasn't a problem, but quite often there is, but we don't know about it.
Yeah, and I think too, we always have, I think it's changing now, but the stereotype for forever, right, was of a drunk was definitely not someone who was fully functional, hold down a full-time job, like my dad was, he always worked full-time, financially took care of the family, like emotionally, he wasn't necessarily present, but it's not the guy on the corner with the paper bag, right? And
Yeah.
you know, since he had passed, my his sister passed, same thing, from cirrhosis, and then my uncle on my mom's side passed from drinking as well. So it's pretty much decimated our family, and just it's been difficult. It's been difficult to watch
Mm,
happen, and
mm.
more so just makes me want to break the cycle for my kids and my
Yeah.
family. I know for a fact I have twins. I have 9-year-old twins, and I know for a fact at least one of them's gonna, if there's genes play any role, one of them at least has got, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
genetic makeup. for it.
Well, I do think genes play a role. You know, I've had some blood tests done recently and genetic test and that, and a lot shows up in the genes, and I think it makes you more vulnerable towards it. You know, like it doesn't automatically make you someone that's going to have a chronic drinking problem, but I think there's elements that make you vulnerable, and I think you and me are like that. That we both had that first drink and was like, yeah, baby, you know, where others are like, oh my God, I'm never doing that again. And they grow up to be people I don't really know, sensible drinkers, people
Yeah.
that can take or leave it. But was so when you met your now husband and you had those 5 Long Island drinks and the fag in your hand, was that the last time you drank then?
I was looking back and I was trying to remember, and I believe so. Like back, you have to figure out, that was 22 years ago. So back then, um, there wasn't this push for sobriety, right? There wasn't a lot out there, but there wasn't, I mean, there wasn't even social media back
Oh, it's
then. So
so different back
dating
then,
myself.
wasn't
Yeah. So there wasn't the idea of like counting days, I
it?
didn't go to AA. I I didn't go to a rehab facility. So it's kind of blurry because I had a lot of trauma at that time, that had been going on. But I believe so. At least that's the last time that I remember being drunk.
Yeah,
And I do remember one time, it was about 10 years later, actually. Um, we were at my brother's house for a holiday, and he brought out some of these little cordial glasses, for like the dessert drinks. And I thought, it's been 10 years. I mean, I still felt like I didn't want to stand out, right? Even though everybody knew I didn't drink, but they didn't know the depth to which caused me to stop drinking. So nobody knew like how bad it had gotten. Nobody in my family knew. I
yeah,
just stopped drinking.
yeah,
And I remember he poured them and I thought, I can have that. It's just a little dessert drink. It's no big deal. And I literally look around and everybody's a quarter of the way through theirs and I'm done.
yeah,
That was like my solid, like, you can't drink,
yeah,
cannot drink.
yeah.
But as far as like actually getting drunk, yeah, I believe that was probably the last time. I don't remember doing it after then. And I not only left my ex, but I left all my quote unquote friends and everything that I knew. I mean, you have to remind yourself, like at that time, I'm 20.
Yeah,
And so I literally cocooned myself, and I had made a decision that it was better to be alone on a Friday or Saturday night than it was to go out and drink, that I had to do this for self-preservation. And luckily I met my, now husband at the time, but he wasn't always available and he still went out with friends. He didn't have a problem. I had the problem. Um, and so that was a big, kind of a reoccurring theme of feeling all alone. And here I did it on purpose. I made myself be alone, but I think it saved me in the end.
it certainly has. But it's interesting because your first part of your life was quite chaotic, wasn't it? And there
Yes.
was that pivotal turn left or turn right in your life, you know, meeting your husband. And it does scare me to think, I mean, me personally, if I hadn't have stopped, I'd be dead. But I was 54 when I gave up. You was 20. But your life could have been so different if you didn't have that moment that night, couldn't it? Of carrying on, maybe,
I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here. I can
yeah,
tell you that. I probably would have been one of those people that would have been dead in their 20s.
yeah,
For without a doubt, I would not be here. And I know, even though, people are like, oh, you must not even think about it anymore. It's been 22 years. And the truth of the matter is that I'm very humble in knowing that I'm still a drink away from a totally different life. If I
yeah,
choose to have that drink, I know where that's going to take me. And they're right. The majority of the time, it's not a big deal to me. I'm not fighting urges and cravings and all of that. But just the other day, out of nowhere, I'm in the grocery store and it's like, oh, that kind of sounds good. I was really stressed out.
yeah,
There was a lot going on. And oh, it was kind of cheap. Oh, I could, there goes my brain. I could have a little one and nobody would know.
Mm.
And it's like, but I know better, you know, and I catch myself. I'm like, you're ridiculous. Like,
Yeah, yeah, I
don't
get that.
even go there, you know,
Yeah. It's
but
like, have
that's
you heard of a thing called the imp of the mind?
no.
It's this like little devil in your mind, and like I remember being on the TV show over in the UK that I do, and then there's always something like Peter Andre. Everyone's heard of him, and he was on the camera talking in the mic, and I said to my mate, I just want to pour a pot of paint over his head. It was like that devil in me that wanted to do, and I'd have been up the motorway in 5 minutes with the sack, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or just swear at someone randomly, like I had Tourette's or something. But that was the kind of thing in my mind as well. When it happens, where it's like, do you know what? I could just pick that bloke's pint up and just down the whole pint and then ruin everything for me. It's a horrible feeling. And I have to catch myself and go, like you just said, don't be ridiculous. But I'm sure it's just that imp of the mind. It's that I could just ruin it all in one foul swoop. But I love what you say about being humble as well, because I hope that I'm the same. That time doesn't take away what I went through, you know, and quite often I revisit some places that I had some terrible rock bottoms just to check in with myself and go, okay, last time you was here, where was you in your life and where are you now? It's really important for me rather than be that person that's, oh, well, it's 5 years ago and yeah, I don't even think about it anymore because that's the dangerous chat. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. That's where it'll get you. I mean, I
yeah,
really feel like that. It's like you're never healed from alcohol use disorder. You know,
no,
you're just not. And so I think, you know, learning about yourself and learning how to get through life in those tough times and not reaching for the bottle and, you know, navigating life sober. I just, for me personally, the best thing I can do is I just stay really humble because
yeah,
I know that I could not be here today very easily. And I also know that I could make that choice to start and I would lose everything because I
yeah,
know if I pick up that one drink, it won't be just one.
yeah.
It's,
And be an example as well to your twins. I mean, you know, you said you know one that might, uh, but he might not, or she might not. You know, like it's, but there might be something in them that you see you in them.
I do. For me, it's more of like, I definitely do. But that is such a motivation to me. Like when I had my own children, it was like, okay, I am going to try my best to teach them how to get through life without mind altering substances, without the
Yeah.
need for that. And part of that is talking about mental health, because I think mental health is a huge thing. You
Mm,
know, I mean, I was running from anxiety. People are usually, you know, if you have social anxiety, whatever it may be, depression, you know, it's like a lot of the clients that I work with, you see that they have other, you know, mental health issues that maybe that was what they used at the time, you know, to cope. And that was their medicine. So, like, we talk about mental health, my kids and I, you know, what does that look like? Physical health, you know, how they're connected. We talk about addiction. They know mom's history. I mean, for age appropriate, of course,
yeah.
but and they know that their grandpa died from drinking. They know, you know, these things because I think they're never too young. Kids are very smart. We don't always give them enough credit for how smart they are,
Yeah.
but to have those open and honest conversations about, you know, drugs, alcohol, what it does, what it doesn't do, giving them the space to have, you know, I let them take mental health days from school. They just need a break. They learning how to regulate themselves, emotional regulation and things like that. And so it takes a lot of energy, but it's so worth it. And my hope is that, you know, they won't feel the need to do those, to have that drink, you know, or to take that drug. And that also I'm kind of getting away from like the taboo subject of it. You know, they don't
Yeah.
see my husband drinks, but he can take it or leave it. And I'm at the point now where like he can buy a 6 pack of beer. It will sit there for months. He'll have a beer every month or two. So, which is so foreign to me, I don't even get it. But but so that they see that, you know, it's not a big thing in
Yeah.
our house. You
Yeah.
know, it's not normal. It's not normal for us to drink every night. We don't do that.
Things are so different now, though, aren't they? Like the
Oh,
knowledge we have and the open conversations. I mean, when I think back to my era, it wouldn't even, no one knew about mental health or a dysregulated nervous system, or, you know, like even things like ADHD and stuff like that these days. And, you know, for me, I realize now at the age I am that I just used alcohol as a coping mechanism to get through for 40 years.
mhm.
That's what it was. You know, and based off trauma and stuff, which I'm looking into now. But I think there's more open conversations now. You do amazing work. I was going to talk about that. Like for you with your life now, how does that look like for you after 22 years sober? You help a lot of people, don't you?
Yeah, it was kind of a long road coming, and then the ironic part is like I never identified as a sober person. I just didn't drink.
Yeah.
That was my thing. But I never, and what happened was right before COVID hit, or actually right when it hit, I was I had applied to tell a story about my dad. It was called the Addiction Diaries, and it was about people's life experience with addiction. It didn't have to be your own. It could be, you as family members or whatever. And the ironic thing is I applied and I got to have a part in that book. And my part was my relationship with my dad and how he had passed and all that. Still not talking about, myself. And it took about a year or so, maybe two. And I met up with a gal locally here, and we become good friends. She's in the sober community. And she said, one day we were talking, and I said, well, I would love to help people, but I don't know what I have to offer. And she was like, you have long-term sobriety. What are you talking about? And it was like the first time I ever even considered that. It was like the weirdest thing. And I was like, oh, because I was thinking, well, I can offer from the viewpoint of like I've lost three people, important people in my life. I've had trauma, I've had this and that, but and she's like, no, but you've had this long-term sobriety. This is actually
Yeah.
really helpful. And so last year I decided like, okay, I'm gonna do something with this because I can't just be quiet. And I want to really help people. My goal is to change. I think if we can change one person at a time, that's how you change a generation, right? You have to do it one person at a time. So I went back to school and I got my certified professional recovery coaching license. And that was kind of the first step. And now I have my own business. So it's called My Sober Sunrise. And I work one-on-one with clients and coaching them in sobriety. And it's just, and then also obviously with you on Sober Buddies hosting meetings. And it's just the most rewarding job
Mm.
I could ever have. I
Yeah.
feel like I learn more about me,
Yeah.
and I learn more, than they do. Like with me, I'm their coach, but humans amaze me on a daily basis, what they come through, the grit that they have to
Yeah.
make it to where they are. I just feel so blessed to be able to be in the space with them.
Yeah, I agree. And I always say that people who've got in trouble with drink and that as well are so resilient and strong. You
Oh,
know,
yes.
a lot of us have gone through a lot growing up, and how we've managed to, end our relationship with this bloody drug, this toxic, addictive drug, the strength it takes. And I always try and champion people for that, say you're stronger than what you think, you know, like, because in the beginning, it's almost like, so I was again related to a relationship. It's like you've been with someone for 20, 30 years, of some people, for me, 40. It's easy to say, do you know what, back the devil, you know. And you know what I said, Jess, at 54, I said enough's enough. A lot of people go, do you know what? I've been doing it so long now. What's the point? But when I look at my blood results that I've had recently, and it says liver fine, I'm very lucky there, by the way. I've got strong genes in that area. Liver fine, kidneys fine, hormones fine, few tweaks here and there. But in general, I'm in really good health, right? If I'd have had those blood tests 5 years ago, I'd have been like, well, I'm sorry, mate, but you got no chance, you know? So you can turn your life around,
Oh,
with
it's
the
never too late.
never too late, but with the right support. But what I was going to say as well, Jess, was giving back is so powerful when you are stopping. And I know people that give back in my communities as well. I've got some groups and they're like a month without a drink, but I can hear them already giving back to the day oneers by
Yes.
going, come on, you can do it. Just put your head on the pillow tonight without a drink, start again tomorrow. And I'm looking at these people thinking, do you know what? That's absolutely fantastic, you know. And hosting these meetings like we do on Sober Buddy, and that is like keeps us grounded as well. Because for me, I really feel where they are right now in the present when they share and they tell their stories and how they're struggling or if they're not struggling and that. And it's just such a bond, isn't it? Of, you know, I look at it like the Mason's handshake. It's like we just know. You say, you know, I've been in trouble with booze, and we just wink and go, yeah, I got you. You know, there's no shame or judgment at all, is there? It's such a wonderful community.
It's an amazing community. And I feel like my by nature, I'm very introverted. So I like to be in my own little corner. And it's taken me time to realize that that doesn't serve anyone. That I can't the impact that I want to have in this world and the impact, the legacy that I want to leave requires me to get out of my comfort zone, right? Which
Yeah.
is being that introvert in the corner and getting out there and working with people. And I realized, just like you said, the community, the strength, I think just the utter grit and willpower that humans have
Mm,
is incredible.
mm,
And showing them that, when I work with my one-on-one clients, it's like, I will believe in you until you can believe in you because I know you can do it. I
mm,
know you can do it. So
mm.
I will have the faith. Then one thing that I always tell my clients is it's not even one day at a time, it's one moment because
Yeah.
sometimes that's what it takes. Sometimes it's like you need to sit on your hands and literally not move until the craving passes,
Yeah.
but it does get better.
Yeah.
And I think it's also my right. I've lost so many family. I had a small family to begin with, and now over about half of them are gone because of alcoholism. And
Mm,
it just tears at me. And if nothing
yeah.
else, I'd like to prevent that for other people, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, and your people as well, you know, you break in the cycle because quite often we just repeat the cycle, don't we? And what you're
Oh,
doing with your family is breaking that cycle by not drinking, by educating them. Mine's altering drugs, you know. Do you
yeah.
drink coffee?
Decaf.
Hey, well done.
I mean, I love coffee, but the caffeine just makes me too jittery.
Yeah,
So if I want a little caffeine, I might have like a tea. I like chai teas and stuff, but no, I'm pretty plain Jane as I get.
Zen.
I'm
Yeah.
the weird one that likes coffee for the taste. Like my husband thinks I'm crazy. He's like, "Why are you going to drink coffee if it's decaf?" And I was like, "Well,
Oh,
because I just like the taste."
yeah, yeah. But I'm the same. I'll have a decaf coffee and I love it. But I'm
Yeah.
even limiting that now to a couple of days. But yeah, decaf, don't smoke, don't take drugs, don't do anything really. But I'm really healthy and happy. And that's the main thing, isn't it? You know, you don't
Yeah,
have to do all these things.
those things that we think that are helping us cope are usually like mind altering substances are actually making it worse. And I
Yeah,
think that's like the biggest thing is that once you get sober and you're able to get clear headed about it and stuff, it's like life is hard. And I think recognizing that is huge because at least for me growing up, yeah, the one okay kind of emotion to have was to be happy. You're supposed to be happy all the time.
yeah,
That's what my dad was like. Happy is the one thing you can be, is happy. And that's just not realistic. And I think I chased that happy feeling for so long with alcohol, because when I had the alcohol and when I was feeling the high from it, I was happy, or so I
yeah,
thought.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
just, I always work with my clients of like, let's get into reality. Like life is half crappy and half great, and that's just life.
yeah,
And being able to live and feel those emotions and know they're not going to kill you, and there is no bad emotion except that we label them as bad, right?
yeah,
So yeah, I think you know, for me, I also know myself and I know that I have an addictive personality. So I just don't go there. You know, I'm not the person who's gonna, you know, have a drink or have a smoke here and there and be like, that's just not gonna happen.
It's accepting that, I think, you know, if you're that kind of person, you've got to accept you can't have that relationship anymore, right? And that's why I say I'm allergic to it. It's an absolute non-negotiable because if I have one drink, it'll end up killing me, and I'm not ready to go yet. I've got too much to do. Do you know what I mean? There's too much to achieve in this world, isn't there?
Yes.
Oh, but Jess, honestly, you're amazing. It's so lovely to have you on as a guest, and congratulations on everything you're achieving as well,
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on here.
Les. Thank you so much, Jess. Have a lovely day.
You too.